Welcome to the show, folks. This is Wrestling Changed My Life. Here we go.
In a really eerie way. It was almost like a premonition. Like I just did so much visualization when I would go to sleep. Like that year and all. I just always thought about it.
We can endure anything and adapt and pivot and change. Wrestling gave us that ability.
I would say nothing in life has impacted me more than the things wrestling has taught me in terms of self-reflection, resilience.
Toughness. Some guys have it, some guys don't.
Adversity, 100%. How to pick myself up and be a man after I failed.
And everything that has shaped my life and where I'm at today would not be there without the values and basically the lessons I've learned through the sport of wrestling.
For me, wrestling saved my life because it allowed me to focus and channel my energy.
We're fortunate if you wrestled, because if you wrestled, natural talent helps, but it's 5% of the ingredient. It pales in comparison to heart and technique and effort.
It humbled me, taught me humility. Nothing can humble you more than wrestling. I think it's the learning to adapt, right? You learn how to adapt, you learn how to solve problems.
If I look back at my time I spent wrestling, if it gave me one thing more than anything else, it's mental toughness.
Welcome back to Wrestling Changed My Life. This is your host, Ryan Warner. Thank you so much for tuning in, ladies and gents. My guest today is the great Jay Jaggers. You know you're a bad man when your first name is one initial, and that's what we have here. Jay was a 4-time Ohio State champion before going on to win 2 national titles for the Buckeyes, and he's now the associate head coach, also with the Buckeyes. He's a lifer, folks. Really enjoyed this conversation. Fan of the week goes to Dynasty Wrestling Academy. That's at Dynasty_Wrestling_Academy on the gram. Really appreciate the support, guys. And last but not least, this episode is brought to you by Gable the GOAT Part 2, which is a documentary podcast on Dan Gable covering the years 1987 through 1993. You'll hear from the likes of Tom Ryan, Lincoln McElravy, Troy Steiner, Alan Freed for you Ohio folks out there. It's all there, as well as the archival and music score for this documentary podcast. You can find it via episode 109 in the feed, or I'll text it to you. If you text Dan Gable to 555-888, we'll text you the documentary right to your phone. And that's it, folks. Let's give it up for the one and only Jay Jaggers. Peace! Ladies and gentlemen, we are here with Jay Jaggers. How are you today, sir?
Hanging in there, man, just like everybody.
Man, absolutely. And we're getting through it together. Hopefully we'll give the folks an hour reprieve here through this conversation when it comes out next week. Obviously you're the associate head coach at Ohio State and, a wrestling legend, 2-time national champ, but we'll go back to the origin story, man. What was day one for you like in the sport? When did it all start?
Yeah, so I think I started wrestling at about 5 years old. My dad took me up to a practice to watch my older cousin, who was about 3 years older than me, and at a school called St. Peter Chanel High School. It was a high school, but they had a feeder program, like K through 8 biddy program that fed into the high school, Catholic school. And so I went up to that program, and I was just sitting on the wall. And then my dad probably had this master plan, right? But he likes to pretend it was on accident. He was, we were just going to watch your cousin. And a gentleman kind of came over to me, and he's like, "Do you want to do this?" And I was like, "Yeah, this is a lot better than sitting on the wall." And so I started that day, and then the man who pulled me off the wall to wrestle ended up being my coach all the way through high school. So he was my youth coach, like K through 8, and then he was my coach through high school. So Graham Coghill, so Northeast Ohio, he's kind of a legend. He's an all-time Hall of Famer, and he's getting up there, but he's a beast, man. He's the guy.
Yeah, he looked like he had won like 5 or 6 state titles and runner-up 7 or 8 times.
Yeah, he's everybody. Like I said, everybody in Northeast Ohio kind of knows Graham Coghill. It's like he's part of that group with like Bill Barger, Urbis, like Riggs, like some of the most well-respected coaches in Northeast Ohio.
And I got to ask, how small was that school? I notice it's closed now because enrollment was so down. How small is the school you went to back in the day?
I think I graduated with about maybe just over 100.
Oh,
so
not too
100.
bad.
Yeah. Yeah, not like Stieber, where he's probably had like 50 kids or something.
Really?
Almost played. Stieber's school's way smaller. But yeah, it shut down a few years ago. Gene Smith actually went to Chanel, so he's our athletic director. Our athletic trainer for our wrestling team, Will, he went to Chanel. And then our recruiting coordinator, Coach Ralph, he went to Chanel. So we kind of got a little mini army of Chanel guys that are involved with Ohio State wrestling. It's kind of neat.
That is pretty cool. So in Ohio, is the small school division kind of like stepchild to everything else? Because in Illinois, the 1A, Illinois 3A is the biggest. And when I was in it, it was only 2, but 1A was just no. And a lot of my friends are from 1A schools and they're country kids, but no one even cared about 1A in Illinois. Was it like that in Ohio or not as much?
Not when I was in school. I mean, when I was in school, like you could take the champs. Now, obviously, like the depth is a little different. You know what I mean? Like guys that are probably 7th or 8th in D1 or D2 might be a little cut above the D3 guys nowadays. But listen, when I was in school and even a couple of years before me, like some of Ohio State, our best guys have been Division III guys. So there's always individuals. And I remember like my freshman year was like the first time 3 teams had ever scored over 100 points at the state tournament. So it was like us, St. Vincent St. Mary, which is, where LeBron went to school, and then CVCA at the time. Like all 3 teams, we were all in the same district, like all were over 100 points at the state. Like it was crazy. Like that team race was wild. It kind of reminded me of like ours with Penn State in 2018.
That was a great year.
It was fun.
So I forget, were you and LeBron growing up at the same time?
No, so he's from Akron, but I'm from Northfield, which is kind of between Akron and Cleveland. But two of my best friends in high school, the Hurley brothers, Mike and Ryan, they went to school with him, so they knew him really well. So we crossed paths a few times in high school.
Okay. Now, so after that first practice with your pops, you're watching your cousin. Did you just follow the Ohio youth circuit, going to tournaments like crazy, going to TOC, all that stuff from then on? Was it like a smooth transition all the way to high school, or did you have kind of different times where it hooked you more than others?
Yeah, so my dad put me in a tournament early, maybe that first year. I can't really exactly remember, but I remember he put me in like an 8 and under tournament. It might have been when I was 6, so I might have practiced like a handful of times that when I was 5, and then the next year I'd have to ask him. But he put me in a tournament. It was like an 8 and under tournament, and I got just mollywopped. I got teched twice. I actually ended up wrestling like one of the kids that I wrestled at the time. Like when people were like, who's he wrestling? And they said the kid's name. I still remember his name. His name is Sergio Jones. People were like, oh, you got Sergio first round. Kid had like lightning bolts in his head and like a Lycra singlet. Back then, like everybody wore cotton. So he killed me. And then I got teched the next one. And then my dad was like, maybe we'll hold off on some competitions until he's a little ready, or just hit more his age group. Like back then, tournaments were sometimes they were 6 and under, sometimes the lowest age group was 8 and under. So once I got like with my crew at like when I was like 6 and started wrestling 6 and unders, I was good like right away.
Mm-hmm. And you advanced through the ranks, and like what point in middle school do you think you realized you wanted to be a 4-timer?
Yeah. I'd say probably earlier in middle school, although I played 3 sports like my whole life. So I played baseball, I played football, and I wrestled. And then in 8th grade, so summer going into 9th grade, I made like the Ohio Fargo team, and that's when I shelved baseball. So like, cause I was on like a travel team, and we really good team. I played on this Maple Heights team. I love these guys, and the team, like all these kids started going to high school. So our team kind of broke up. So I really didn't have I would have kept playing baseball all the way through too, but I didn't really have a team because everybody went to high school and went their different ways. So I was kind of like in between spots, and I made the Fargo team. So that's when I basically just stopped playing baseball. And then I played football through high school until my senior year. My senior year was the only year I didn't play football.
Man,
but
that's crazy because you weren't a big guy.
No, I was pretty small. I was like, I think the year, so in 2001, we won the Ohio State championship in football. And I was like 142 pounds, I think, and I was the starting safety. So it was, I just had to go low, right? And I was like John Smith. playing football, just low leveling people.
Dude, is there anything better than a small school winning a high school state football title?
Yeah, it was cool. It was, it's interesting though, because, like I said, I went to a Catholic school in Cleveland area. So it was the continuity. Like, it wasn't like what you see on like Friday Night Lights, where it's a public school, the whole town shuts down, because it's like everybody's, transient from different areas. You got kids from Warrensville, kids, from Cleveland, kids from Twinsburg. So like the internal, like the school, like all the parents and the kids that went there and the alumni that were behind it. But it wasn't like that where like the city shut down. Like I had buddies, I'm from Northfield, which is Nordonia Hills school. Like all my kids, my guys that I grew up with, like my best friends, they made it to the state championship the following year. And like, that was nuts. Like seeing them go, like, cause the whole town shut down. So that was cool.
Got it. So is that Catholic school thing? I guess that makes sense. I mean, I grew up in a town of 6,000 and 8,000 would show up for the games, and it was all there was. I mean, we were in the middle of nowhere near the border of Iowa. So I see what you're saying. And we were talking about it a little bit before we came on the air. One of my buddies was telling me how you had the bleach blonde hair in high school and you kind of had an edge about you. Where did all that come from? Was that just a natural part of you, or did you kind of do it on purpose?
No, I mean, I just thought I was being cool, man. Like, like I was trying to be cool. And by the way, like now it's funny, but back then that was the trend. Like I was on trend. Everybody was blonde, streaking their hair and stuff. So it's like, it sounds funny to say now, but go look at any picture from 2001. Everybody had highlights, man.
Dude, they did.
But yeah, I didn't really care. Like, I don't know. I was kind of like I was peacocking, man.
Yeah, I love it. I mean, if Flo was around back then, you would have been like the peacock season. Now it's Gilman and DeSanto, but that would have been you back then.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know if I'm that fun, to be honest. That entertaining. I mean, I just wore crazy stuff.
Now, when you got to Ohio State, Russ Helgson was the coach. What year did Coach Ryan come in and transition?
After my second year, so summer of 2006.
What was the difference before, pre and post Coach Ryan? Because you're not going to meet a bigger Tom Ryan fan than me, and I love his story and the fact that he transferred from Syracuse to Iowa, walked on, and then got beat by Pat Smith in that controversial match. So I love that guy. But then I talked to Tommy Rollins, and he talks about Coach Helgson like he's a god.
Mm-hmm.
So you got to work with two of these legends. What was the compare and contrast the two coaches?
I would just say, I don't know, maybe just, and I love Russ, but it was probably just like youth and exuberance. You know what I'm saying? Like it was just an injection of energy into the program, to be honest, just because it was, Russ had been there so long and our team wasn't that good, to be honest. So like, that's also something that I mean, everybody's human, right? So it's like attitudes and mood is dependent kind of on how your team's doing, so that's something, that I've learned to like try to like manage, right? Like if we lose a duel, like stay up, man, because these kids are going to feed off that if they see you're down and whatnot. So I would just say like, yeah, it was just time, man. It was we just needed an injection of energy.
But Coach Ryan, that guy is one of the most optimistic people you meet. So he came in guns blazing, huh?
Double dose of energy.
Now, did he ever tell any stories about the old Iowa Gable days, or did he keep it pretty focused on what you guys were doing?
No, he doesn't. He now, because I sit with him in staff meetings and we're talking, he'll drop some nuggets as to like what he's learned. But no, he didn't. He never tried to come in and turn us into that program, right? So he has his own identity as a coach, and he takes things. One thing about Tom is he's eager to learn from anybody. He is not staunch in his beliefs or his ways when it comes to like how to do things. He's very open-minded. He lets us kind of as a staff be like stars in our roles, which I love. And he's great. I do have a good story about Tom, though, a funny one that I'd love to tell.
Hit it.
All right, so this was his first team meeting. Well, I had met him, like I said, I told this to Flo a couple weeks ago. I was on like the hiring committee they got to interview the coaches. They put like 3 athletes and then a bunch of staff members on there in different departments to get to interview. So that was cool, getting to meet the candidates. So Coach Ryan got the job, and I remember his first team meeting in like June or July or whatever it was of 2006. So the rest of all my buddies were going to get to meet him. I'm like, you're going to love him. He's crazy. He's nuts. He's ready to roll. And he shows up, man, and he's wearing this like sweatshirt. I'll stand up. He's wearing this like sweatshirt that's like the sleeve, like it's a sweatshirt. It ain't a 3/4. Like he's not trying to be cool. It's like the sweatshirt sleeves are like down to here and all like super tight. And it says like Ohio State and like 12-point like Times New Roman font, like the cheesiest. Like I'm tapping my boy TJ, who's like my best friend on the team. I'm like, yo, that's a women's sweatshirt, man. and so he's like, it is, man. I think it is too. So he's giving this like rousing message, call to arms. We're gonna be great. And then after years later, I asked him. I go, hey, you remember your first meeting? Like, what was up with that sweatshirt? He's like, it was my wife's. He's like, I was leaving the house. All I had was Hofstra gear. I didn't have time to go, to the bookstore and get gear. So she had one sweatshirt. He goes, and I wouldn't show up not wearing the team stuff. So he put on his wife's sweatshirt and addressed the team for the first time. I was like, what did we get ourselves into?
Oh my God. That's hilarious. Now, who else was a part of that? Who else did Ohio State hire back in that day? Can you remember back to some of the other candidates?
Yeah. Oh yeah. No, the four coaches that interviewed were Coach Ryan, Tommy Rollins, he was super young. This was 2006. About 21. Time was about 25 years old. So, and then Jim Heffernan and Terry Brands.
Wow. And Terry Brands and Tom Ryan lived together in college.
Yeah.
What do you remember anything that sticks out from Terry Brands' interview?
No, it was like once everybody came in, I loved everybody, right? So like I said, I was so excited for, not change, but it was like we didn't have a coach. So it was like anybody who I've heard of would be great. And I remember Terry was passionate, and I thought I would have done really well with him because, I worked pretty hard, and that wasn't something that like ever, I was never afraid to like work hard. So I was like, I'll vibe with him because I'll put in time and he'll respect me. So, after each candidate came in, I was like, hire him. So I didn't really care at the time, but I said this the other day too. Coach Ryan did a sneaky move, and I asked for like all the coaches, like what's your staff going to look like, right? That was a big question for me because it's more than just one guy, and I know assistants get in there a lot. So I was like, what's your staff going to look like? And he's like, glad you asked. He's like, I want to try to get Terry Brands as my head assistant, Tommy Rollins as my other assistant. And I was like, well, that's 3/4 of the people interviewing for head jobs. Why don't we just go with this guy? We can get all 3, And so slick little move by Tom, which I think. So I brought that up to him a little bit ago, and he's like, Terry and I were having conversations about, going with or doing that, and then something like fell through. Or I think Iowa maybe came available right around that same time too, and that's when Tom Brands got the Iowa job. So that's what. So I don't. As much as I made a joke that it was like Tom being slick, I think that there was a chance maybe Terry would have came with them had Iowa not had opened too.
Yeah, that was a fun time because Cale had just gone to Penn State around that time.
Ohio State was like the first domino to fall though. Like that's what forced everything. Yes, I remember that specifically. Is like when Ohio State let go Russ, and they were looking for people. Some of these other schools that were like teetering were like, we better make our move now, because they didn't want to lose some. They just knew what Ohio State has to offer, and if somebody gets locked in there at the right price, like there's no reason to leave.
Yeah, you're right. It was Tom Brands went to Iowa, Cale went to Penn State, either that same year or within that year. I think it was the same year.
Cale was a little later. Cale was a little later because he was at Iowa State when I was in college.
Oh, he was.
But there was another school too. It was like Iowa made their move. I can't remember.
Yeah.
But
that was fun though. I mean, look at those guys now. Those 3 programs have been the tops ever since. Cornell obviously has been there, but yeah. So who was the staff that Coach Ryan brought in? Was Lou part of that original staff?
Yep. So Lou Roselli, and then he did retain Tommy Rollins, and then Joe Heskett, who, I don't know if you've been following the news, but he's battling right now. So if anybody, whenever people watch this, make sure, you think of Joe, and I've put on some Facebook, some opportunities to help him. So he's in a battle for his life right now. I mean, I think he's stable and everything like that, and he's on the road to recovery, but quality of life, he's in a battle for it. So.
I love Joe Heskett. I've had him on the show, and after that interview, we had a couple calls, more like mentoring calls, and I just love that guy. And yeah, so what happened? He had the incident in 2007 where he medaled at the World Championships with severely limited capacity. He had a heart issue, had the heart attack, had to retire, then was doing good for 12 years it seemed like, and had a stroke. Ironically, the same week the Nationals were canceled, and now when you say he's battling for the quality of his life, what's the status? What's the latest?
I think so. I get my information from his wife or his ex-wife on Facebook, or the GoFundMe his grandma posts update. But like speech and rehab, he's got a rehab. I'm not sure. I think the update the other day was that he was able to FaceTime his kids, and he was able to say "I love you." But I think that he's got to retrain a lot of stuff. I'm not an expert in this field by means, but I just think from everything I hear, he's got a long road to go. And I was with him a week before it happened, man. Like we were in the wrestling room first practice. Coach Rollins runs a club with Steber Elite. Steber and him kind of on Wednesdays they have like little kids. So my son and Joe's son were in there practicing. So me and Joe were sitting there for an hour just talking. And then it was literally 1 week before that happened. So it's kind of crazy.
Yeah, prayers with the Heskett family for sure. And it's cool his grandmother's doing that, because I know his grandmother pretty much raised him and was like his best friend throughout all that. So no surprise she's running it. So when you say your kids are you have a kid in the youth club, what approach do you take? Do you do total hands off, or are you going in there militant style during a kid's practice?
Ask Stever. I'm the craziest dad. No. I try to. Well, here's the thing. When you got, like I said, he's in Logan's club. So Steber Elite Wrestling Academy, which is ran out of our room. So Logan, pays the rental fee and runs his club out of our Ohio State wrestling room. So obviously I trust Logan wholeheartly with everything. But sometimes you just know your kid, right? So it's like I know my kid in everything that makes him tick and whatnot. So I'll sometimes be down there and just watch. But I don't put shoes on and walk around. I'll either, because I can go to my office like up top and watch through the glass, or I can be down like under the mat in the weight equipment and watch them. But at tournaments, sometimes it's just me and him are there because they don't really. Logan's still ironing out like the competition schedule and stuff. So I had to take him to some tournaments myself. So obviously I had to coach him there. But and then I help him at home. I help him at home a lot.
Yeah. It's such a fine balance, man. I had Yanni on this morning. Obviously, his dad's super involved and was his coach. But then you hear from, I'm a big Sean Bormay fan. He had the Overtime School of Wrestling. That was the complete opposite, where all those dads dropped their kids off and they weren't even allowed to watch practice. So it's like there's no recipe, but I think it's dependent on the kid. I mean, you've seen top recruits come in and do well, top recruits come in and not do well. What do you think is the difference of kids making that transition from high school to college and being an All-American?
Yeah, they got to want to do it themselves, right?
Mm-hmm.
You can't to fulfill somebody else's dream. Like that's not the motivation that ever is sustainable. It's got to be on you, intrinsic motivation that you want to do that for you. And also I think there are a lot of different self-motivating factors where it's like, maybe I want to do this because I want to make money, or I want to do this because I want Twitter followers, and what we've found and what our staff's philosophy, at least, is that the greatest motivator is love for the sport, right? Like love of the game. Like why do you want to be? Love this. I love wrestling. That's why. It isn't about the Nike contract or whatever. It's about because this is what I do. I'm a wrestler. So you trying to get my boy to kind of fall in love with it. Right now it's the good news is it's moved up from like 13th on his sports list to like 3rd or 4th. So what it was right below like air hockey and ping pong, and so he's getting it. He had a good year this year, and his states got canceled like everything, but he was upset about it. So it's a slow trickle into him, but he's pretty good.
That's awesome. And you talk about love of the sport. When you got to college, you obviously loved wrestling, and I've read that when you were in high school, everything you were doing was for college, but you battled some injuries early on. I don't know if you wrestled in it your freshman year, but didn't All-American make it to the Nationals, and then you get into the lineup your sophomore year, and you start to see some results. Before that happened, though, did you ever have a time where you lost the faith or lost the love because of those injuries before you had kind of burst onto the scene at Ohio State?
Yeah, man, I thought I might not make it through, to be honest with you. So my true freshman year, I was slated to start. I was going to start at 141, and then I tore my UCL, blew out my elbow at the Michigan State Open. So that shelved me for about 5 months, came back in like April. And then I went up to 49 for my redshirt freshman year. Had maybe my best regular season, honestly. I was top 10 pretty much for the whole year. Beat a few guys that were in the round of 12. I beat Gregor Gillespie that year when he was on fire. Like, he was a beast. So I was like right there with guys. Lost to Schlater on riding time. And then at the Big Tens, I tore my ACL. So that's why I didn't wrestle at the Nationals in 2006, my freshman year. And so then that's a 6 or 7 month injury. Get reconstruction on your knee, come back, and then I dropped down to 41 my sophomore year, and went into the Nationals unseeded. That was just a hard year, man. It's like I dropped a weight class, came back off of I just gotten kind of the rust kicked off from the elbow too. Like feeling pretty good, and then boom, down another 6 months. So when you're down for about 12 of the first 24 months of college and you're not used to that was challenging. So
what pulled you through it?
I don't know.
Like, do you ever have a come to Jesus moment where there's like one morning? I mean, or is it just kind of slowly but surely?
No, I just I knew that I could wrestle. So it's like I just had to stay healthy. So it wasn't anything like where I was hanging by a thread about to quit. I just knew this. I was like, man, if you have another season, like a really bad injury, like you're running out of time. You know what I mean? Like how long, you have 3 years left. What are you going to rehab the whole time? Like, this isn't fun. So, I met my dad. My dad was pretty callous. So he told me basically, suck it up, get over it, get on the rehab and let's go. And I was like, oh, shit. All right, man.
And when the Big Ten injury happened, did you have to default out, or did you finish the Big Tens in like the week after you realized how bad it was hurt?
No, I had to default. So I was in the consolation semis because I lost to Schlater on the front in the semis. And my foot got stuck in the mat. I was trying to seat drop a guy, and it kind of crunched me down. It was pretty violent when it happened. Like, the way it was like one of those where if you watch it like if you're watching on the NFL and they'd be like, oh, like don't watch the replay because it's pretty gnarly. But it was bad. It was bad right away.
And did you ever battle the Schlaters in high school? Because you guys came up at the same time, right?
No, we. I think Dustin was a little. He started smaller than me, then he got bigger than me. So no, I never wrestled Dustin till that year. Only 2 times I've wrestled him.
Gotcha. And I'm glad you brought up the move to 141 because that's one of the things I kept coming across was massive weight cut for you. What went into the decision to go 41? And like, I heard you got up to like 165, and you're a lean guy, so like that had to have been brutal to make that all 3 years. Was that a team move or just something you wanted to do?
Yeah, Lance Palmer. Yeah. Lance was sweet. I don't know. He was pretty damn good, but it was like, I'm not going over. Me and Lance aren't going to duke it out for 49. Mm-hmm. I have the capability to make this weight cut. He doesn't. I'll do it. I'll go down. So yeah, that's kind of why.
Gotcha. I figured it was something like that. And
I'm going to get you on a charger too. I'm going to step away
ahead.
for 1 second.
Take your time.
Things in it. I actually might have to switch the vantage point. You can
no
go ahead.
No problem at all. Take your time. We're moving through the Jaggers household, folks.
Right.
Getting plugged in.
Well, this and like the Skype and the Zoom just kill the battery.
Oh, brutal.
All right, I'm with you, brother.
Cool. So I didn't realize that you had that many injuries, that like two big ones like that. Because then fast forward to the Nationals your junior year, in the finals against Mendez, you had already upset Russell, but you're in the finals against Mendez. Injury bug happens again late in the match. Talk us through that for the folks who haven't watched that match. It was but 15 years or so ago, which is crazy to say because I remember watching it. But kind of talk us through the match and what happened.
12.
My bad.
Yeah, that one was I was okay. I could handle that one though because I just won the Nationals.
Right.
So that one was a little easier to deal with and come back from. But yeah, I had a good tournament, man. I was I knew I could win. Like but a lot of guys could have, man. There was a lot of parity in those weight classes that I won. I mean, who else was in there? It was like Mendez, Nathan Morgan, Charlie Griffin from Hofstra, Russell, myself. It wasn't like there wasn't like like a Stieber senior year where it's like that dude's a cut above everybody. It was pretty wide open. So I knew I could win. And, I was the 6th seed. One of the coolest things that I remember about it was back then, like, I don't know what website, it might've been like Bodog or one of those like gambling websites. They did odds on like people that were going to win the title. Right. And I remember going off at like 22-1 were the odds for me. So like friends were like, I'm trying to get some money down. And I'm like, I'm going to win. Like, I'm going to win the Nationals. And, yeah, I had a friend, one of my best, he was best man at my wedding. He lived in Cleveland at the time, and he didn't plan to go to the Nationals. I was like, dude, you got to get to the Nationals. I'm going to win. And he's like, oh, all right, kind of like, all right, like what else are you going to say? You're going to lose? He's like, if you make it to the finals, I'll be there. And I was like, well, pack your bags. And then when I won in the semis, I called him like 20 minutes later, and he's like, we're already in the car. So they knew they were already in the car, but yeah, it was fun, man. It was awesome.
When they said that in the finals match, you're winning 5-1 with 20 seconds or left, something like that. You get hurt pretty bad with your ankle, and then you had told someone, you're like, dude, they would have had to cut my foot off before I was forfeiting out that match. I mean, there was no way.
Yeah, I had in a really eerie way. It was almost like a premonition. Like I just did so much visualization when I would go to sleep. Like that year and all, I just always thought about it, probably which gave me some anxiety too, some match anxiety. I know I used to throw up quite a bit before matches, like a wimp. Now I look back, I'm like, what were you doing? It was wrestling matches, man. But I didn't have that, I didn't have that hindsight or that foresight, I should say. So I remember oh, what were you supposed to
I was going to say, you said that it was like a premonition.
Premonition. Yeah. So my fault. And so I'd thought of like every scenario. Like I had wrestled the national tournament in my head a million times. Like every different combination of guys, like Russell, Griffin, Mendez, Russell, Mendez, Morgan, whoever. So it's like I had wrestled every guy, and I'd always play out every scenario where it was like you're down by 6, you get put to your back, you got to pin them. Oh, you're down by 1 with 30 seconds left. What are you going to hit? Or you're protecting with 20 left. Down block. And one of them that I always kind of circled back to, I was like, what if you got hurt and you had to like hero it out? Which I'm not a hero. I'm not saying that. But like when you're thinking of it in your head when you're laying down at night, you're like you're gonna have to gut it out. So when it happened, dude, it was like a moment of clarity where I was like, holy this is happening. I like you knew this was going to happen. So it was pretty eerie, dude. And I think that gave me some calm about it though too. I was like, you're going to be fine. You've been here.
Man, so you would think about it that much.
Yeah. I wrestled the tournament like every night in my head.
Is that something you try to get your guys to do now?
No, not. I mean, there's like I said, there's a healthy amount of visualization and there's overdoing it. Right. And I was probably on the overdoing it end, and I made it a bigger. I probably built it up in my head more than it needed to be, but that's also why I can speak to that to guys now, because, learn from my mistakes.
Well, it's like wrestling's a thing where when you're in it, it's the most important thing in the world. But then when you're done, you only get the perspective then. Maybe a few guys get it during it, but that's pretty rare. But I mean, you're someone who you would call your shot. Like you said, you'd call your buddies. You're like, I'm going to make the finals. So to me, you seem like you had the utmost confidence, but you would get that nervous where you'd throw up before matches?
Yeah. Before, during, like, it was weird too, man. It'd be like a stressful situation, like a scramble, and I'd come out of it like, oh, like, uh-oh, I'm going to throw up. I was soft.
That's wild, because again, like, you're one of the, to me, you seem like a super confident competitor. And the funny thing,
I just thought, like I said, I think I was putting way too much pressure on it, like way too much emphasis in it, like as if my whole identity was wrapped up in it, and it's not,
Right. Did you feel that way in your senior year too?
A little less, I would say. I don't know, man. It's hard to, like you said, 10, 11, 12 years later, like,
right,
pinpoint how you felt in that moment. That was just like the overarching theme, is that I was wound really tight.
Yeah. And I just thought it was interesting to read that I found an article that said, like, people had thought it was a fluke that you won because you were the 6th seed, and that you would get on the message boards and like type back that you were going to win it again as a senior. I don't know if that's true or not, but
no, that's not true. I've never posted. I don't engage like that, but I would consume it.
You would?
I'd see
use
it
as motivation?
Yeah. My motivation. My dad would keep like a list. He'd be like, that guy, if I ever see that guy, wait till you win it your senior year. I hope I see that guy at the bar or something. So he's got like a scroll, rolls down to the floor of people that stuff about me, man.
Like a Game of Thrones type thing, man.
Right.
So once you were done, I mean, did you have any idea what you wanted to do? Did you know you always wanted to coach?
Yeah. Not always. Not like when I was 8 or whatever.
Yeah.
Be a fireman or something. But yeah, when I was in college, and I think that was part of it too, is that, like, in my mind, I was like, you better do well in college, or how are you going to coach college, right? Because, like, we're a unique sport into which, there's not a lot of Bill Belichick style guys that maybe weren't the great football player, but they can just scheme and X's and O's. Like, in our sport, you kind of, we put a lot of emphasis on, like, whatever you want, like accolades, which I don't think is necessarily right at all. I don't think that, for you to trust somebody and develop student athletes, I don't think you have to be the best wrestler ever, right? Mm-hmm. But that's kind of that's the catch-22 about our sport. So I think that was a little bit of the pressure too that I was dealing with, is that I was like, what you want to do, you better have something on your resume. Because it's not like I had any work experience. Maybe I cut my grandma's yard a few times. That was it. So yeah, I wanted to coach.
Yeah, wrestling is unique like that. You think about Coach K at Duke. I mean, he played for Army, but I don't think he was like a pro, or even John Wooden. I mean, he played in college, but wasn't an all-star by any means. And I'm kind of with you. I think it's a negative that wrestling has that stigma, but man, it sure helps to make a wrestler feel confident knowing that their coach has done it.
Yeah, I think we're a unique sport like that.
Well, the last thing I wanted to ask you about coaches, now that you are a coach, first is there any difference in your day-to-day from when you went from assistant to associate head coach?
Not really. Just some shuffling around of different responsibilities, but for the most part, no.
So, okay, with that in mind, when I wake up now, I know that there's 2 to 3 areas I need to focus on each day to have a good day. And if that's head coach is what it looks like for them, but as an assistant, you're waking up, you're not thinking about yourself, you're thinking about your guys, but like, would you say your top 2 to 3 things for the day are recruiting, athlete development, or like, how do you look at structuring your day and getting it done as an associate head coach?
It's cyclical. It all depends on where we are in the season and what time of the year it is. I'm a to-do list like freak. So like I have a notes section in my phone with like my to-do list, and I look at that thing probably like 50 times a day just to make sure, and try to cross things off and whatnot. So different things, you put different priority on and what's pressing. But yeah, I would say, in season, especially, after the early signing period. So like mid-November through March, it's totally, mostly athlete development, with some recruiting maintenance and whatnot, talking to kids, maybe going on a few, see them compete at some tournaments over the holidays and whatnot. But yeah, the big emphasis is on development, at least during the year. I mean, it's got to be, right?
And are you making calls to the recruits throughout the wrestling season, or not even that?
During season, yeah. That's all the time. That's an all the time thing. Now that the rules, ever since the rules changed from, back in our day, it was July 1st, one phone call a week, and then kids made a choice in like October. I was like, shoot, that was easy. Recruiting was easy back then, man. One phone call a week. You had a list of 22 kids or something. You call them, all right, done. Now it's you gotta talk to these kids a lot more often.
So that's ongoing all the time.
Yeah.
What time of year it is?
Correct.
And what's on the to-do list during a normal off season? I mean, now it's not normal at all, but if it was.
Yeah. Well, at Ohio State, obviously, we have guys trying to make world teams. So whether it's junior world teams, U23 world teams, senior world teams. So it's like we don't really shut down. Honestly, the biggest 3-week break that I have in my life is like August 1st till August 21st when our guys are on campus. That's when things are the slowest. But even then, you're like making sure all the freshmen are going to, get off on the right foot and everything's ready for the team to report back and what's your first meeting going to look like and stuff like that. But, I would say we're 365, day program. And it's just the intensity's dialed down a little bit in April, May, June, as much as, yes, you're making world teams, you have RTC practices, but it's just like it's not as heightened sense of urgency as it is during the college season.
Well, to your point, I've heard coaches say that it's even busier, which kind of seems impossible, busier in the off season with the fundraising, with the camps, with the RTC, with the recruiting than it can be during the season. Because then you just have a kind of a single-minded focus.
That without question. Yeah, that can happen as well. Yeah.
Wow. Crazy. Well, Coach, I know you have a family at home now, a 1-year-old, so we'll let you go here soon. The last question we always ask is, how did wrestling change your life? And obviously, it is your life since you're a coach, as are most people we have on here. But what has it given you, or what do you think? Maybe a better way to put it is, what do you hope wrestling will pass down to your son if he sticks it out and wrestles all the way through? I mean, how do you think about it in that term?
Yeah, the thing that I think about in terms of wrestling and is just how grateful I am that it's given me, the opportunity to meet the people in my life that I have. So, I'm kind of what you would call like a connector. Like I have a lot of different pockets of friends that I try to keep in contact with, and that's very important to me, my friends and my family. And I honestly, like a lot of them, they wouldn't be in my life if it wasn't for the sport of wrestling. Somehow the sport of wrestling brought me together with, my buddies from Shadyside, Ohio. Right. And I wouldn't have went to St. Peter Chanel High School if it wasn't for wrestling, those friends. And I probably wouldn't have, I don't know if I would have came to Ohio State or not, but, the group that, I play softball with are wrestling guys. So it's like all these different pockets of friends that I have. The intro was made by the sport of wrestling. So I'm forever grateful from that standpoint.
Yeah, that's a big one. It almost is hard to go back to hang out with people who don't share that same mindset. But then again, I know some people that they have to have friends that are out of the sport, but I kind of am the former.
Yeah, I have ton of those groups that I just mentioned. They're not diehard wrestling people, or they're not into wrestling, but I met them because one friend wrestled, and then I met his 10 friends or whatnot. So wrestling's definitely been the connecting piece to a lot of different people. But yeah, I definitely agree with that. Sometimes, you don't want to be around just the same kind of people all the time, right? Different vantage points, different outlooks, and it's trying to be well-rounded.
Absolutely. Well, Coach, greatly appreciate your time today, sir. Stay safe out there, and hopefully we'll connect again soon once some tournaments are back on here, man.
Anytime, man. And you guys as well, and all the listeners as well. Stay safe and take care.
And all great things must come to an end. If you want to hear more from the podcast, text WRESTLE to 555-888. That's WRESTLE to 555-888. You can also find us on Instagram, Wrestling Changed My Life, Twitter, Ryan_N_Warner, as well as our website, WrestlingChangedMyLife.com. Take care, y'all. Calm. Take care, y'all. Calm. Take care, y'all. Calm. Take care, y'all. Calm. Take care, y'all. Calm.